or first they're going to vaccinate you, then they're going to take your guns and Bibles away. And as ridiculous as that sounds to us, a quarter of the nation believed it and needlessly lost their lives. It is just a massive loss of life, all for showing allegiance to far-right extremism. I think the current record for developing a vaccine from start to licensure in the United States is around 3 or 4 years.
Usually a 10 to 25 year time frame. People forget how long it really takes to develop an effective and safe vaccine and do all the adequate clinical testing.
Look at the timelines of coronavirus, this COVID-19 vaccines. It really follows the same progression as almost any other vaccine. And the vaccine development cycle for COVID-19 vaccines very much goes along with what we've seen before.
Remember, the reason why these protests are happening in the first place is to protest structural racism. COVID-19 is decimating African American communities, and that is actually, in my opinion, actually a component of the protests.
I think it's important our public health leaders speak out on this as well. We simply cannot be holding rallies. It's hard to imagine a scenario where you would have any meaningful data in order to release a vaccine, certainly not under a license, but even under this emergency use authorization, which I don't even know what that means.
A new name now, Brian. It's the OG villain. I'm the original gangster villain.
Call me the original gangster villain, the OG villain. Call me the OG villain, the original gangster villain. I still remember the time when a school teacher died when I was a kid in the school. I mean, that was very traumatic, and that will happen over and over again.
So you're saying we don't need to open schools up at all at this point?
That's right.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's really important not to diminish the accomplishments of the Biden administration. Clearly, having a new administration that is at least honest with the American people.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
I know a anti-science disinformation campaign when I see it, and I could smell this one a mile away. 92% reduction in asymptomatic transmission, so it's preventing people from shedding virus from their nose and mouth.
These vaccines will stop asymptomatic transmission.
This anti-science element that began out of the Republican Tea Party, expanded across the Republican Party, now globalizing, is a threat, and it's a killer. Is when we look at groups that are going to refuse vaccines, it's pretty high among the African American population because they don't trust what's been going on. They all point to the same thing. It's white Republicans. And I don't know how to more elegantly say it. We have to revisit what the anti-vaccine movement has become, which is really an anti-science empire. They're using this as a way to consolidate power by showing that they're stronger than the scientists. Far-right element of the Republican Party has launched a war of aggression against vaccines, vaccine scientists, and other scientists. One of the things the political right does is always point out that the death rate from COVID-19 among adolescents is relatively low, and that's true. Deliberately put upon us by the far-right element of the Republican Party. They engineered, I don't think they realized it, but they basically engineered the return of COVID-19 to the southern United States. That the Russian government is piling on anti-vaccine content as a wedge issue to divide our country, and we need help from Homeland Security, we need help from the Commerce Department, from the Justice Department, and the State Department to do something about the weaponized health communication that's coming out of Russia. We don't take down the anti-vaccine, anti-science empire, this is going to be pervasive. And the security of the country depends on getting everybody vaccinated. This is not your father's COVID, your mother's COVID.
The obsession with mandates. And I say, look, right now, no one's talking about mandates.
We can mandate that all of the eligible adolescents over the age of 12 get vaccinated if they want to go to school. This is like something before the Industrial Revolution, when we had child labor. Every kid over the age of 12 needs to be vaccinated if they're going to attend schools. Florida and Louisiana are vying with Botswana for the world's highest rate of COVID-19. So what this is nothing more than a badge of tribal allegiance to say that you're in the ivermectin club. From day one, this was going to be a 3-dose vaccine. And I would imagine if the president were in meetings back in 2020, he might have realized that people tie their allegiance to not getting vaccinated to the Republican Party, to the GOP, on what I call the three-headed monster, which is the political aggression from the far right, number one, Number two, the disinformation dozen, identified by the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Those are non-governmental groups. And the third, which surprises some, is the Russian government. We're going to need the Department of Homeland Security, the Justice Department, the Commerce Department, even the State Department, and he's got to create this interagency task force. And now you're starting to see this move up into Canada as well. So we've been exporting this kind of anti-science aggression up from the far right. And all I'll say is, imagine if this were Roberto Clemente or Walter Payton or Henry Aaron. Would they talk this way? They wouldn't. They'd be out there saving lives. Anti-science is now a leading cause of death in the United States. To get long COVID and have gray matter brain degeneration and cognitive decline. So I think we need to vaccinate against that as well. I call it death by anti-science aggression, and this has now become one of the leading killers in the United States, far more than global terrorism or nuclear proliferation or cyber attacks. Absolute bizarre mass form of self-immolation. And we have literally millions of individuals waiting to get attacked by COVID-19 who remain defiant of vaccines. We've still got 40% of those populations unvaccinated, and those are the ones who are going to get hospitalized and lose their lives. Anti-science is now one of the leading killers of young and middle-aged adults in the United States. Or if you start lifting mask mandates now, you're basically condemning all of the kids to get infected with Omicron. Joe Rogan has a lot of influence, and influences a lot of people who we specifically need to reach.